Next on Currents News, a terrifying day for passengers on this cruise ship as several were checked for the coronavirus. I'm Emily Drooby, and that is ahead.
A baby girl left at a Manhattan church is doing well tonight. We'll tell you why her mom took the drastic step.
Robots are taking over a Catholic elementary school here in Brooklyn, but they don't have minds of their own. They're being controlled by the city's brightest young scientists. I'm Jessica Easthope, and that's ahead.
Plus, in about an hour, the Democrats will go at each other in New Hampshire. Voters get their chance Tuesday. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. The coronavirus crisis is hitting home tonight. A cruise ship docked in New Jersey this morning, and more than 24 Chinese nationals on board were screened for the deadly disease. Some were taken to the hospital. Currents News' Emily Drooby reports from Bayonne. Emily.
Christine, it's been a scary day here for passengers of the Royal Caribbean Anthem of the Seas as people were quarantined due to coronavirus concerns. People boarded buses to get away from the affected ship, many unsure of what had happened aboard.
I have no idea about that, honestly.
Well, I have no idea.
But for some, what happened was a nightmare. 27 passengers who had recently traveled to China were screened by the CDC for the coronavirus, the results prompting 4 to be rushed to a local hospital. The rapid response was just the latest indication that the CDC isn't taking any chances when it comes to the disease, which has already killed 560 people and infected more than 28,000 others. In a statement, Royal Caribbean said none of the 4 passengers brought to the hospital showed any clinical signs and symptoms of the virus. They added the guest hadn't been in China since January 26th. Still, they're taking precautions, and people who were supposed to board the ship for its Friday departure say they understand.
I feel disappointed, but I also understand the fact that if the coronavirus is on board or someone's had the coronavirus, that we don't want to get on and get it.
Royal Caribbean has delayed the ship's departure from today to tomorrow, even though authorities have already cleared it. In Bayonne, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
And there's more bad news about the virus breaking out on cruise ships. At least 11 Americans are testing positive aboard the Diamond Princess. The ship is quarantined at the Japanese port of Yokohama. More than 60 people are ill. Rebecca Frazier is one of the Americans and said she's worried.
I'd say the unknown. Like, I don't know what's going to happen an hour from now, tomorrow. Like, for all we know, we could stay quarantined on the ship for a month.
The Japanese government is requiring the nearly 3,000 passengers and crew on the ship to stay isolated for the next 2 weeks. There's an online revolt in China tonight over the death of the doctor who tried to sound an early alarm about the virus. When Dr. Li Wen-yang sent out an alert about the disease, the cops cracked down, ordering him to stop. He died yesterday from the virus. Now, Chinese from all walks of life are posting angry messages on social media, highly critical over his silencing. A newborn baby girl is safe and in good health tonight after being left at a Manhattan church. Reportedly, the desperate mom gave the infant to an employee at St. Spiridion Greek Orthodox Church yesterday with a note saying she's an addict and can't keep the baby. Because of New York's safe haven laws, she will not be charged. The heat is still on between President Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. A day after they clashed over prayer, impeachment, and the State of the Union, Trump fired a new salvo this morning, this time targeting all his Democratic critics.
There's a lot of evil on that side. They've gone crazy. That group is, they say Trump derangement syndrome. They've got it. They've got a bad case of it. You saw that. That was on display the other night when she ripped up the speech. That was terrible. It was a terrible, so disrespectful to our country.
Trump spoke to reporters before heading off to Charlotte, and he boasted about a big court victory. A federal appeals court dismissed an anti-corruption lawsuit brought by congressional Democrats. The win permits the president to keep his business affairs private. And tonight, New York State is planning to sue the White House so residents can once again breeze through airport security lines. We told you yesterday, New Yorkers can no longer sign up for programs that permit trusted travelers to avoid screening. The feds making that move after the state blocked them from getting access to DMV records of undocumented immigrants. The Democrats who want President Trump's job will hit the debate stage again tonight. 7 of them will go head-to-head at St. Anselm's College in Manchester, New Hampshire. But just one of them seems to be taking most of the heat.
But it's so good to be here.
From a Get Out the Vote event to a visit to a child care center, Senator Elizabeth Warren is busy crisscrossing the Granite State, as are her fellow Democratic presidential candidates before tonight's debate.
This is a campaign that a year ago, I think a lot of people were questioning why we were even making the attempt.
But after narrowly taking the lead in Iowa, Pete Buttigieg is talking about why he should be the person to take the White House from President Donald Trump.
We just had this idea that we could build a different kind of politics, of belonging based on bringing people together.
And his surge in the polls is definitely bringing his opponents together. Senator Bernie Sanders is calling out Buttigieg for accepting campaign cash from billionaire donors.
I like Pete Buttigieg, nice guy. But we are in a moment where billionaires control not only our economy, but our political life.
And former Vice President Joe Biden, who was considered the front runner early on but came in 4th in Iowa, is also focusing his attention on Buttigieg in New Hampshire.
I do believe it's a risk, to be just straight up with you, for this party to nominate someone who's never held an office higher than mayor of a town of 100,000 people in Indiana.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, billionaire activist Tom Steyer, and New York entrepreneur Andy Yang have also qualified for tonight's debate. The New Hampshire primary is on Tuesday. So here's where the candidates stand days after the messy Iowa caucuses. Pete Buttigieg leading Senator Bernie Sanders by 1/10 of a percentage point with 100% of the vote in. A reporting debacle caused the days-long delay.
We're all about accuracy. I'm not about how it affects one candidate or another.
The Iowa Democratic Party is giving the candidates until Monday to request a review of the results. The House is okaying a big package of disaster relief for Puerto Rico after a series of earthquakes hit the island recently. This afternoon's vote was largely along party lines, with a few Republicans joining Democrats. Nearly $5 billion are being earmarked for road repairs and schools. There's also money for the territory's troubled electric grid, but the future of the measure is uncertain in the Senate. Now for the latest on storm damage in the American South. The region is recovering tonight after severe weather killed at least 2 people and destroyed a lot of property. Currents News' Tim Harfman has the latest.
A close call caught on camera. A tree yanked from its foundation and slammed into this car on a busy interstate outside of Atlanta. Deadly storms ripped across the South, leaving behind a trail of destruction.
I looked at the one and I said, "Oh Lord, they're taking my baby swing away." He said, "You better get from there, Wanda."
In Alabama, a tornado tore apart mobile homes. 1 person was killed, another injured. In Tennessee, a 36-year-old woman died after a tree fell on a van carrying 7 people.
We've had a lot of trees on houses.
It's like being in a war zone.
Torrential rains and destructive winds wreaked havoc across Mississippi, Georgia, and the Carolinas, triggering flash floods like this creek that swelled and burst its banks.
It was a creek. It is now a river that is flowing pretty rapidly, I'd say. This is pretty bad.
A tornado warning sparked an evacuation of the control tower at the Charlotte Douglas International Airport in North Carolina. Debris on the runway shut the airport down for hours. Severe weather also triggered a ground stop at the world's busiest airport in Atlanta. The FAA said departures were delayed up to 90 minutes. Tim Harfman, Currents News.
President Trump is reporting that the U.S. military has killed another top terrorist. Qasim al-Rimi ran al-Qaeda in Yemen. The terrorist claimed responsibility for last year's deadly shooting at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. On December 6th, a Saudi national killed 3 American sailors. Now, with al-Rimi eliminated, the commander-in-chief says American national security is stronger. Catholics around the world are anxious to see it, and next week they'll get the chance. The Pope's summary of October's big summit on the Amazon. The Vatican is saying tonight the Holy Father's apostolic exhortation is coming out on February 12th. The hot-button issues Francis is expected to tackle are the ordination of married men as priests and whether women can become deacons. There's a lot more news headed your way. The robots aren't taking over, but they are helping Catholic kids in Brooklyn get ready for a big battle tomorrow. The dedication of religious women and men is one of the things Bishop DiMarzio is talking about tonight. He's minutes away. The Pope is shining a spotlight on the blood money coming from human trafficking. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A battle of kids and machines. These students are gearing up to grind gears in a big contest. They're members of the robotics team at Brooklyn's St. Xavier's Catholic Academy, and they've been practicing long and hard for what's coming up tomorrow, the chance to become citywide champions. Jessica Easthope tells us more from Park Slope.
With laser focus and the speed of a NASCAR pit crew, this robotics team is ready for a fierce competition.
The goal is to complete as much missions on the board as possible with the attachments that you have created, and the higher points you get, the more likely you are to get through to the next round.
On Friday, St. Xavier Catholic Academy's 7th and 8th grade robotics team practiced for the last time before a qualifying competition on Saturday.
All right, this is our last practice. I want to see your best run.
The teams are coached by DEMERA, who explained just how involved robotics can be.
They learn STEM and learn how to research while learning also how to pseudocode. Watching them learn how to use the motors, learning the sensor, they start in September.
Every year, First Lego League, the group behind the competition, sets a theme for the contest. This time, it's city design. The St. Xavier teams are tackling traffic, housing air quality, along with subway platform gaps and flooding. The competition has grown the kids' passion not only for science, but also the world around them.
We have seen floods cause damage to people's homes. We have seen them take lives, and it causes problems with commute when people try to go to work and school.
Even though it's the science that draws students in, it's the teamwork that keeps them coming back.
All our teammates come from different backgrounds, but we still find some way to connect, and we all have skills that we can bring to the team.
Robotics has allowed these students to break out of their comfort zones and look toward a promising future. If any of the 4 teams score enough points in Saturday's competition, they'll qualify for the citywide championships, where they could win grants and even high school and college scholarships. In Brooklyn, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
This month, Catholics look at 2 special days that celebrate commitment, a nun or brother's commitment to God, honored by Sunday's World Day of Consecrated Life, and a couple's commitment to each other next Friday on St. Valentine's Day. The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, talks about both with Ed Wilkinson. Ed.
Thank you. During February, we celebrated World Day for Consecrated Life and also St. Valentine's Day, and those are going to be our topics today with Bishop DiMarzio. Bishop, we have a World Day for Consecrated Life. When we talk about consecrated life, who are we talking about? The men and women religious?
That's right, men and women religious who really live the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. I like this little story that sometimes makes it clear to people that one day there was a chicken and a pig that were friends, and they were walking along and said, I think we should have breakfast. So we should contribute something to this. So that the chicken said, yeah, I can lay a couple of eggs. And the pig said, well, that's for you, that's a contribution. But for me to have ham and eggs, that's a total commitment. And it's exactly what the difference is. A total commitment. Poverty, chastity, and obedience is total commitment. That kind of a life is a life that really shows we believe. And that's where there's a life of sacrifice. There's sacrifice in there, but also the result is a life of joy and commitment to the Lord and to the good of people. Religious life has been really the glory of our country, the United States, especially religious women who manned our schools, brothers also at the schools. This is what made us a great Catholic nation, because we were educated. There was this Catholic culture that we lived in that enabled people to live their faith. We've lost a lot of it because we don't have that commitment anymore. As I will talk to the consecrated people this year, we have our annual celebration, and say, but we can't imagine a world without some consecrated life. We were spoiled, really. There were so many, and we didn't recognize what they really did at that time. They weren't really prized the way they should have. But still, there are people, young people, who will commit themselves in this way. We need it. We need it as a model in the church.
But there seem to be fewer and fewer attracted to that kind of life. I mean, it's not very attractive to want to enter into a life of chastity and poverty and obedience. Nobody likes those things.
It's completely countercultural today. At one time, it was, but it wasn't as bad as today because we have so much. The country is very rich in comparison to the past. The culture we live in is oversexed. And obedience. I mean, this is probably the biggest problem, is that people today want to do whatever they want to do individually. To say, I'm going to give up my will to somebody else, that's the really countercultural piece of this. So all of this has an effect on young people today. And yet there still are some that are willing to make that commitment, but it's more difficult than ever.
Now, what about this sense of commitment? Because we're asking for a lifetime of commitment here, and people are entering, and how do they know what they're going to be doing 20, 30 years later? And it's not just for religious life, but it affects people who want to get married too.
Talking about Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Valentine's Day. There's that commitment of life.
The commitment is a lifetime commitment, and that's where the problem today again is countercultural. People don't make long-term commitments today. They don't keep one job for their whole life, as you did. All right, you came here almost 50 years ago, and you're still in the same job. People don't. It doesn't happen today anymore. They go from job to job just for the sake of changing sometimes, not because even for money.
Sure.
So commitment is a big problem in our society also. That people will stay in one set of circumstances, make the best of them in marriage, even if there are difficulties, if there's sacrifice. So love means sacrifice. I love the line from the movie, what was it? The movie that was so popular in the 70s. Love Story.
Right.
To love means you never have to say you're sorry. Well, that's impossibly not true. So that's where the sacrifice comes in. You have to say you're sorry. You have to sacrifice. And that's when true love perdures. So Valentine's Day is a nice day, but it's longer than just one day to commitment.
That's true. Bishop, thanks so much for your insights on that. And now back to the news desk.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DiMarzio. Pope Francis, a religious order priest himself, celebrated the World Day of Consecrated Life at St. Peter's Basilica. Though he hasn't released his Valentine's Day plans, he has written about love and marriage in his landmark apostolic exhortation. Currents News is presenting a special multi-part series on the evil that Pope Francis calls a crime against humanity, human trafficking. Now the Holy Father is devoting his prayer intention this month for migrants who are victimized by traffickers. Here's a part of the Pope's video message.
A menudo los migrantes son víctimas del tráfico y de la trata de personas. Entre otras causas, sucede esto por la corrupción de los que están dispuestos a hacer cualquier cosa con tal de enriquecerse.
The migrants are victims of sexual slavery, forced labor, and forced marriage. The Pope calls the money from the dirty, underhanded business of the human flesh peddlers blood money. And stay with Currents News for our exclusive series on human trafficking. In our next report, too often the epidemic is a silent one, but now survivors and their families are making their voices heard and speaking out about how to defeat this terrible evil.
I don't fear talking about human trafficking or my family's experience, and in fact, speaking is empowering.
The conclusion of our special series, Human Trafficking Exposed, will air next Thursday at 7 on Currents News. Sunday is a big night for movie buffs. The Oscars will be handed out, and here to look at the nominees from a Catholic perspective is David DiCerto, Director of Programming at the Sheen Center for Thought and Culture and co-host of Net TV's Real Faith. Welcome, David, and everyone is wondering, who do you think is going to come out on top here?
Well, this year, for a change, there really isn't a clear-cut front-runner. It's really a two-horse race. I mean, the heavy odds-on favorite is going to be Sam Mendes' 1917. But there is a clear path that you might see that there might be an upset with Parasite.
Interesting. All right, well, let's take a deeper look into some of the movies that are getting attention, and one of those is The Joker. Highly praised, the actor Joaquin Phoenix, most Oscar nominations the film has, and he has already won a Golden Globe and a SAG Award, but you had a problem with the morality of the movie. Talk about that.
Sure. I mean, obviously, the performance is tremendous, and he's a shoo-in for the Oscar. It's a very well-made film, but to what end? It really is a film that's symptomatic of our culture's ongoing fascination with evil. And it exists in a world, in this film, where the evil isn't the fascination, but it's in a world where virtue and heroism don't even seem to exist. And that seems to be the problem. Not that it's talking about evil, but it doesn't even give that option for the idea that there could be an ideal like virtue or heroism.
Right. It scares me. I haven't even gotten to see it. You know, critics are also buzzing about Parasite, which could be the first foreign language film to win Best Picture. Do you think it has a chance?
It sure does. It's a slight chance. That could be an upset. Korean director Bong Joon-ho does an amazing job. It is an intense film. This is certainly not family viewing. There's a lot of problematic content in it, but it is very engaging. And I think there is a Catholic theme in the film. Don't want to give too much away, but Dorothy Day, when working with the poor, always talked about the odor of the poor. And that is kind of a theme that works throughout the story. I think you could see this film, read a Flannery O'Connor, and you could really have an interesting conversation about the church's teaching about social justice and poverty.
Okay, and they're saying that 1917 and Parasite could be neck and neck here. So what do you think about that?
I think they could spread the statues around. I think, you know, the clear front runner is 1917. It's visually a tour de force. But they may give Sam Mendes the Director Award and Parasite the Best Picture. But if you're asking me where to put your money, I think 1917 is certainly going to be the clear-cut favorite.
All right, they'll spread the wealth, though. Were there any movies among the nominations you feel are particularly important for Catholics?
There's a film that's not among the contenders that I think is particularly important. Terrence Malick's masterful A Hidden Life about Blessed Franz Jagerstatter. Terrence Malick is, you know, a cinematic genius, and his films usually garner some Oscar attention. For some reason, it's been completely overlooked this year, and I think that's a real shame.
Well, we'll have to check it out. David DiCerto, co-host of Net TV's Real Faith, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, a Michigan man's best friend also became his savior after the pit bull Labrador mix alerted him to a heart attack.
She just body slammed me. She's never done anything like that. She just stood up and just slammed right into my back. And I've had surgery, so she knows not to mess with my back. I yelled at her because I didn't know what she was doing. And so she took off out of my bedroom.
Ken Richter had been asleep, but he was in the middle of a heart attack when the dog roused him, making it possible to get help in time. Now Ken will celebrate his 53rd birthday next month, thanks to his dog, Cheyenne. That's great. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.